Good morning, everybody. My name is John Goodin. I'm also going to speak in English. I've been working here in Uruguay to study Uruguayan cuisine using network models. So a little about my background. I graduated in 2018 from the University of Richmond with a degree in biology, and cooking and food have been a lifelong interest of mine. I decided to pursue a Fulbright to study cuisine and try to understand it from a more rigorous scientific perspective. I chose Uruguay for my Fulbright on the recommendation of one of my professors at Richmond. I spoke with him about my desire to study food and my background in biology, and he recommended I contact Dr. Matias Arim, who's a professor at the University of the Republic in Maldonado. And he uses network science normally to study ecological communities, but he also has an interest in food. So networks are a tool scientists use to study relationships between objects. They consist of two parts, links and nodes. Nodes are the object in question, and links indicate a relationship between two objects. So in a social network, nodes would represent people, and links would represent a relationship between people, for example. So to model Uruguayan cuisine, we got recipe and ingredient data from the two editions of the Manual de Cocina, a Uruguayan cookbook Matias believed is representative of Uruguayan cuisine. We selected an edition from 1966 and an edition from 2017 in order to analyze how the cuisine has changed over time. And we used the R programming language to construct network models for both years. So here is 1966. It's a little difficult to see, but the large cluster in the middle is all of the recipes. And the dots on the outside are ingredients. And you can see the ingredients are organized into groups by color called modules. So everything here that's yellow is a module, everything that's red is a module, the blue as well. And modules are statistically significant subgroups of ingredients. So they're connected to many of the same recipes. And you might imagine in a perfect network that these would represent sub-cuisines. So maybe all of the baking recipes are in one module and all of the recipes that involve meat are in another module. But because modules share ingredients between one another, for example, salt and butter are used in a lot of different recipes, no matter what you're cooking, you have very weird modules that show up like this one here, which has prunes, mustard seed, oatmeal, cucumber, and goose. And I would never make a recipe with those, so they're a little interesting. So here is the network for 2017, and as you can see, the biggest change is in the number of these modules. So in 1966, there are about 16 of these different subgroups, and in 2017, we have only 6. So we can see over time that the cuisine has gotten much more connected to itself. And we think this is because ingredients that have high caloric density, like meat and butter, have become cheaper over time. And so they show up in more recipes because more people can afford to cook with things that offer more nutrition, more calories. So despite this large change in the number of modules, the most important ingredients in the cuisine have remained relatively constant over time. These are 3 ways to measure the importance of a node in a network. Betweenness centrality is a measure of the shortest path an ingredient can take to connect to the other nodes in a network. Closeness centrality is how close a given node is to other nodes in the network. And normalized degree is probably the easiest to understand. It's just simply the number of connections it makes to other ingredients. And so no matter which way you slice it, the same ingredients show up over and over again, both in 1966 and 2017. The most important ingredients are salt, sugar, butter, water, black pepper, onion, and this is pretty invariant no matter which one you're looking at. So this research is potentially useful in analyzing other cuisines. Usually when anthropologists study cuisines, they do personal interviews with people, and they're mostly interested in the frequency of ingredients that show up. So an anthropologist might be able to make a table like this from the research that just shows how many, the frequency of ingredients, the most important recipes. but they wouldn't be able to see how the structure of a cuisine has changed over time, because these tables look relatively similar year to year, but only with the network can we see that the frequency of connections has changed. So I think this is pretty interesting, and you could use this method potentially to study other sets of relationships between objects. So what are the most important donors for a nonprofit organization over time, for example? Who are the most influential people in a social network over time? These are all things that can be done using the same method that we've applied to cuisine here. And so changing courses, I just want to talk about the impact Fulbright has had on me personally. In addition to working on my project, I've been taking Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu lessons at a local martial arts school with normal people, normal Uruguayans. When I arrived in Uruguay, I really valued prestige. The prestige of the Fulbright Fellowship is what motivated me to apply in the first place, and I was thrilled when I got the scholarship for that reason. I definitely grew up in a culture around Washington, D.C., where we valued academic performance, where the prestige of your job mattered, being close to government, and these sorts of things. But while I was taking jiu-jitsu lessons, I interacted with a lot of young guys my age who didn't have prestigious jobs. They worked in construction, or they helped their parents run a small business. Many of them didn't have high school diplomas. And even though they didn't have prestigious jobs, they seemed to be enjoying their lives by focusing on their hobbies and their friends and their family. And this had an effect on me of de-emphasizing the importance I place on prestige overall. So I'm confident now that no matter what I decide to pursue after Fulbright, I know I can have a meaningful life if I focus on friends and family and my personal interests, and I can take a little bit of the pressure off myself for getting a prestigious job when I return. During Fulbright, I considered a lot of different trajectories to pursue afterwards. I considered being a data scientist, getting my PhD, or working for the government, which I think are traditionally prestigious jobs in the U.S., at least. Now I've decided to move to Austin, Texas, and start a small urban farm to pursue my interest in food. And while this might not be prestigious, it definitely will allow me the freedom I want to focus on my friendships and my interests. So that's what I got for you today. Thanks for listening.